This is the WERU News Report for Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. I'm Amy Browne. The Maine Department of Marine Resources held a public hearing in Searsport last night on a proposal for maintenance dredging at the Sprague Energy docks in that town. As reported previously, testing that was done last year near the Sprague piers found high levels, many above reporting limits, of a large variety of contaminants and known carcinogens, including pesticides, heavy metals, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. In addition, Dr. Kevin Yeager, an independent scientist hired by the federal court in the Holtrachem mercury case, has examined the testing that was done in this case and raised concerns that it was inadequate. The DMR will report any concerns about impacts on fisheries to the Department of Environmental Protection. Today on the news report, we bring you some of the audio from last night's hearing.
All right, good evening. This hearing is advertised to start at 6 o'clock, and it is now 6:04 p.m. My name is Kevin Rousseau, the Maine Department of Marine Resources Regulations Officer, and I will be conducting this hearing. I'd like to introduce DMR staff member Dennis Marknault, and we have Deputy Commissioner Meredith Mendelson and some other members of the department here. Statutory authority for this hearing regarding the fishing impacts of a proposed dredging operation comes from the State of Maine's Title 38 MRS, Chapter 480 TAC D, Subchapter 9 of the Department of Environmental Protection's laws, and the State of Maine's Administrative Procedures Act, Title 5, Subchapter 2. Specifically, subsection 9 of Title 38, Chapter 480 TAC D states number 9, dredging. If the proposed activity involves, and I have copies over there if anybody wishes to read this. If the proposed activity involves dredging, dredge spoils, disposal, or transporting dredge spoils by water, the applicant must demonstrate that the transportation route minimizes adverse impacts on the fishing industry and that the disposal site is geographically suitable. Commissioner of Marine Resources shall provide the department with an assessment of the impacts on the fishing industry of a proposed dredging operation in the coastal wetlands. The assessment must consider impacts to the area to be dredged and impacts to the fishing industry of a proposed route to transport dredged spoils to an ocean disposal site. The Commissioner of Marine Resources may hold a public hearing on the proposed dredging operation. In determining if a hearing is to be held, the Commissioner of Marine Resources shall consider the potential impacts of the proposed dredging operation on fishing in the area to be dredged. If a hearing is held, it must be within at least one of the municipalities, we're in Searsport, in which the dredging operation would take place. If the Commissioner of Marine Resources determines that a hearing is not to be held, the Commissioner of Marine Resources must publish a notice of that determination in a newspaper of general circulation in the area proposed for the dredging operation. The notice must state that the Commissioner of Marine Resources will accept verbal and written comments in lieu of a public hearing. The notice must also state that if 5 or more persons request a public hearing within 30 days of the notice publication, Commissioner of Marine Resources will hold a hearing. If 5 or more persons request a public hearing within 30 days of notice publication, the Commissioner of Marine Resources must hold a hearing, and that's what we're here to do tonight. In making this determination under this subsection, the Department must take into consideration the assessment provided by the Commissioner of Marine Resources. So in accordance with this Administrative Procedures Act and Title 38 law requirements, and is allowed under that section, the Department of Marine Resources originally determined not to hold a public hearing on this proposal in its notice published October 16, 2014 in the Bangor Daily News. This was determined due to the minimal amount of dredge material, the immediate upland disposal of dredge spoils, and no anticipated impact to fishing in the area. Additionally, the DMR requested the use of an environmental bucket dredge in order to minimize resuspension of dredge materials for this operation. Having received written notice from 5 or more persons requesting a public hearing as allowed under Title 38 law requirements, as I just read, DMR published notice of this hearing on Saturday, November 22nd in the Bangor Daily News and on its website Thursday, November 20th, 2014. So, what we have is what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Nault here from the department. He's going to walk through the Department of Marine Resources responsibility in providing comments on fishing impacts on the Maine DEP NERPA application from the Sprague Operating Terminals Maintenance Dredge Permit application. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up for public comment on that. So we're just going to have a few general ground rules for the hearing. When you're speaking, please come forward, sign in, please. State your name and any affiliation you have into the microphone, and then proceed. We ask you to keep your comments relevant to the proposed permit application and the impacts on fishing, and what we're required to comment on to the DEP. If you have a written copy of your statement or comments, that is certainly appreciated. I'd be happy to take that as well. So, and like I said, we have an attendance roster. If you haven't signed in, please feel free to do so. Yes, sir.
Will you be taking comments after the hearing?
We're taking them during the hearing.
Yes, so I'm saying, would you take further written ones after the hearing?
This is what we have. This is the opportunity to do so.
Am I missing something? You mean tomorrow? No, we will not be taking like tomorrow.
No, this is the opportunity to comment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis, and Dennis is going to explain a little bit more about our responsibility under this law and project. Dennis?
Thank you. My name is Dennis Nault. I'm the Environmental Review Coordinator for the Department of Marine Resources. I will basically discuss our responsibilities for comments to the Department of Environmental Protection on this specific project, and I'll get into the basic ground rules of what's going on for this project itself. Our aspect when we look at comments for this is specific comments to impacts to fisheries within the dredge area, the location where the dredge spoils are going to be removed from, impacts to fisheries in the haul route, and impacts to fisheries in the disposal area. Those are our statutory requirements to look at the impacts to those fisheries within those three windows. So where the material is being removed from, the location or the route that that material is going to be hauled along, and the location where that material will be put down, what are the impacts to the fisheries in those three specific areas. Basically for this application, is a total of a little over 13,000 cubic yards of maintenance dredging along the bulk terminal and the liquid terminal docks at Sprague Energy. That material is approximately 7,000 cubic yards that will be removed upland to what's called area number 1. There is a handout on the table if you looked at that. Disposal area number 1 for beneficial use is on the northwestern side of the tank farm. The disposal area number 3, which is a little over 6,000 cubic yards, will be going to dredge location, disposal area number 3, which is along the road closest to the salt piles that they're putting it. That is for storage of windmill parts when they come in from the terminal. All of the dredge material will be taken from a environmental bucket dredge, which will be held to that water aspect, put into line trucks, and then hauled up to the specific disposal locations where it'll be dewatered and controlled. Our concerns would be impacts to that fishery effectively on the two piers. The disposal route, since it's upland, and the disposal areas are upland, are not have impacts to our fisheries that we would be able to have comments on. The areas of concern within those two terminal piers would be for winter flounder habitat at this point in time. We do have some data from the department that says no winter flounder exists there. However, it is within that habitat stratum line, that depth limit where potentially winter flounder could exist against the terminal. There is no active lobster fishery tight against that terminal. It is also a closed prohibited area for shellfish harvesting in that area due to water quality, fecal coliforms not meeting standards, and being a commercial area for harvest of shellfish, so that is not allowed in those direct locations. We do have an open harvest area in Long Cove for shellfish resources, but is not within the dredge area at this point in time. That is the brief description that I have. The area has, these two terminals were last dredged in 2001 and in 2005, where those dredged disposal materials were dumped at the Rockland disposal site. in 2005 and 2001. Those were both permanent activities by the Army Corps of Engineers and DEP at that time period. Because of changing of standards, this material does not meet open water disposal and now has to go to an open site. With that.
Yep, sure. Does anybody have, ma'am, do you have a clarifying question on what Mr. Knoll asked?
Yes, I do. When you were talking about the exact area of the dredge, that's within those red lines, or is there any allowance made for a plume of disturbed sediment that might drift with the tides into other areas?
So we are specifically looking at the dredging activity within those envelopes. The reason why we are requesting an environmental bucket dredge was to minimize any of overwashing or washing of and other materials out of that. So that's part of the reason why we're looking at a specifically tighter closing dredge, so that we minimize any type of sedimentation going out that would impact other bivalve shellfish or finfish species that would be in that area. The dredge window is in the winter months. We should not have an impact to salmon and other sea run type fisheries in that area.
So with that, what I'll do is I'll open up the floor to anybody who wishes to come forward and offer any testimony. And if you can ask you just to sign in and just state your name, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Kim Irvin Tucker, and I'm here representing a group of people. First, the Maine Lobstering Union, as well as individual members of the Zone D Lobster Council, including Mike Hutchings. I also represent the Lincolnville Lobstermen's Association, Sierra Club, the Pembroke Mussel Farm, the Thanks But No Tank, and individual members of the community. But as you have defined the issue, you are looking at the dredging around the dock. But before we get to that question, the Department of Environmental Protection established criteria for testing prior to this dredge proceeding. Based on the expert report submitted by Dr. Kevin Yeager, who is the federal court's expert in the Holtrachem litigation, Malincrot litigation that's pending in federal court now. Dr. Yeager is the court's sediment expert. He has evaluated the prior sediment testing that was done by Sprague for this dredge, and then DEP, after reviewing Dr. Yeager's report of the inadequacies regarding that prior sediment testing, determined that additional sediment testing was required by Sprague before this project here could proceed. They had two criteria for that: no compositing of the material so that they could retest for high levels of lead, and the second issue was they had a requirement that all of the sediment testing be done in accordance with the Penobscot River mercury study. The reason for this is that not just the health of the fisheries is involved, but also the reputation for Penobscot Bay fisheries is impacted if any of the Malincrot, Holtrachem mercury is spread. And in order for us to protect the reputation of the Penobscot Bay fisheries, adjacent to this and in the entire bay, and for that matter, all Maine lobsters, we must demonstrate whenever we do any dredging or disturbing of the sediment in the upper Penobscot Bay that it is done in accordance with the Penobscot River mercury study. I did not ask for that. Well, I did ask for that, but on behalf of my clients, but DEP agreed with that assessment. DEP directed Sprague to do Penobscot River mercury study compliant testing. Norman Doe, who should have known what that entailed because they were involved in the Penobscot River mercury study as one of the labs that did that, conducted the sediment testing for Sprague in the supplemental testing. Unfortunately, after they gave the test results, I gave those over to Dr. Yeager again to do an assessment of whether the supplemental testing that was done is adequate to meet the standard that DEP has set for this dredging. Dr. Yeager determined that it did not. Not only did it not do that, but because of the use of compositing, the testing that was done did not adequately test for the high levels of lead. And it also did not have sufficient sampling methodology, even under Chapter 118 for the Maine requirements. But it did not meet the Penobscot River mercury study standard, which is very simple. You take a 90 centimeter core, and the first 0 to 20 centimeters, you test every 1 centimeter segment. For the next 20 to 40 centimeters, you do 2 centimeter segments. And from 40 to 90 centimeters, you do 5 centimeter segments. Norman Doe took less than 90 centimeter cores. Only 2 of them ultimately were taken, and they took 5 centimeter segments of that and tested them. So they did improper compositing, contrary to what DEP has said is the rule, and they have done an improper segmenting to do the testing and did not comply with the PRMS standard. So the reason that on behalf of my clients I have requested this hearing is we could not sit idly by to let this dredge proposal, which we have no objection to. It is a maintenance dredge, we support it. It is disposing of the dredge spoils upland, we support that. But what we cannot support is for this tiny project to proceed in violation of what the standard was that DEP set for it on sediment testing, and set a precedent for the big dig and dump that we know is looming on the horizon. Any dredging in Searsport must comply with the standard for the PRMS. DEP agreed with that proposition when they told Sprague to redo this supplemental testing. Sprague failed to follow it. That's the only reason we are here today, is to get DMR to tell them we cannot afford to damage the reputation of any Maine lobster fishery, any fishery out of Penobscot Bay. We have got to be able to demonstrate in each and every time we disturb the sediment in this area that it is done in accordance first with proper sediment testing using the PRMS standard. So that is the proposition I have. I have already submitted in advance of the hearing Dr. Yeager's 2 reports, my letter summarizing those, the letter I sent today, again restating that position, and I will provide you a hard copy of that as well. In addition, I want to put into the hearing record, and I've provided in my letter in advance, the URL for the entire PRMS study. DEP has it on its website. I've provided the website link so that you all will have it, because it explains the consequences, the location of the mercury, which is basically the entire upper Penobscot Bay, down to the southern tip of Islesboro, has a buried layer of Holtrachem mercury buried between 8 and 16 inches, 20 and 40 centimeters below the surface. If it is disturbed, including disturbed by dredging, Chapter 1 of the final report to the court discusses that it could contaminate the entire food web of the bay. We must be cautious. We must, more importantly, in this particular context, we have to continue to demonstrate to the public that we are taking every precaution necessary to know where the Holtrachem mercury is before we dig it up and disturb it, and then we deal with it. We don't object to this project. We do object to this project beginning or being undertaken prior to proper testing, as DEP has itself already adopted the standard of PRMS. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, are you going to enter that in the record? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to enter this as Exhibit 1.
You're listening to the WERU News Report. This is a public hearing that was held by the Department of Marine Resources in Searsport last night on Sprague Energy's proposal to do maintenance dredging near their dock in that town.
Hello.
Yep, hi.
My name is Ron Huber. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Penobscot Bay. We're here to talk about this dredging project, and the Friends of Penobscot Bay has members who worm, who clam, who dig mussels and lobster, and otherwise have a vested interest in our bay here. There. And I wanted to just say, in the interest of saving time, that I agree with everything that was just told to you here by Kim, and did want to, however, bring in an additional point here, and that is that there are a great number of different chemicals that were found in this study already, and of course we believe an additional study, as she suggested, it would give you a finer, better detail. But the fact that there are so many different herbicidal and other chemical wastes that have from atmospheric, from the railroad pesticide use nearby and all that have come there, that I just want to read us part of that list and really ask about the combinatoric effect of these, whereas you have many different chemicals that are at a minor level. When they're put together, you may have something else entirely different. And so I just wanted to list some of those. It's naphthalene, fluorine, phenanthrene, anthracene, fluorethene again, pyrene, benzoanthracene, chrysene, benzofluorethene, indenopyrene, dibenzoanthracene, and benzopyrrolene. And there's several more pages of it, but I won't bother with that. The point is that these are actually from the record of the application for this project. And as I say, while these things are often looked at independently, what's the impact of this chemical, that chemical, you really need to look at the combined effect, which I don't think is being addressed, and particularly, as Ms. Tucker just noted, with a improved sampling regimen that will give you a better level of detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Huber, do you have a list of those?
Yes.
I would appreciate that. That would save me some.
Including many of them.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to enter this as exhibit number 2. Anybody else who wish to come forward on for testimony? Hi, you mind signing in, please? Thank you. Great, thanks. And if you just don't mind stating your name and where you're from, appreciate it.
Okay, my name is Nick Yeager, and I'm a member of the Friends of Penobscot Bay. I'm a resident of Belfast, and I have a twofold question. This goes to what Ron just stated as well. From the report that Sprague put out is a very elaborate chemical list in which most of the chemicals that have been declared in this are way and above what is even considered acceptable. Those limits change over time, but let's say we accept this. So my twofold question is this. One, is the source of these chemicals ever being considered so that they don't continue to contaminate? The second part is, as you store these chemicals on land, what is being done with this, waste that you're picking up to make sure that this doesn't spread? And I guess there's a third part to the question. There are dredging techniques that have been proven in the Netherlands that can make any spill of this not occur while you're dredging it. And why are these dredging techniques not being considered? They're vacuuming techniques that would forego any chance of these chemicals being floated into the rest of the bay and continuing to pollute.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to come forward and offer testimony?
There.
Sure.
I'm Elaine Tucker. I'm a citizen of Belfast.
Great, thanks.
I think that most of the people in this room have actually read the Yeager report. So we're pretty well educated about what the standards need to be for testing. And when it says in here on page 5 to 7, I'm sure you have the Yeager report, that the testing has not been up to standard for Sprague, we want the dredging to happen. We do. We want Searsport to be a port. We love that you're dumping it upland. But when we allow, or we seem to allow, Sprague to do the dredging without proper testing, that really erodes the confidence of everybody who lives on the bay and depends on the bay for their income. So we're really hopeful that you'll do the right thing and give us some confidence in the industrialization of Searsport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to come forward and offer any testimony? Okay, so with that, thank you very much for coming, and good night. Drive safely.
Representatives from the Department of Marine Resources said at last night's public hearing that they would not be accepting any further public comment, but they suggested that questions and concerns about the Sprague Energy Docks dredging plan in Searsport be directed to Maine's Department of Environmental Protection. And that's the WERU News Report for Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. I'm Amy Browne. Join us here every Tuesday and Wednesday at 4:30 for independent news with a local connection, only here on your community radio station WERU-FM, 89.9 Blue Hill, 99.9 Bangor, and streaming online at weru.org. Stay tuned, we've got Democracy Now! Coming up next, and then a night of great music as always.